Hopefully we are back. We'll see if we back in just a second here.
You ready to do round one?
Hold on. No. Okay, let's see. Okay, now I'm pretty sure we're back.
We're back?
We back.
We're back. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Well, Ben, to begin our discussion of Daniel Cormier's UFC 226 victory over Stipe Miocic, I would like, if we may, to spend a moment talking about catharsis.
Okay, wow.
Because I think it goes without saying that this victory for Daniel Cormier to win the UFC heavyweight title was an emotional one. And I think it was emotional for a lot of the people watching. And because it was emotional and because it was a surprise, it took me a little while to realize that what I was feeling perhaps was catharsis. Because it seems to me like Daniel Cormier's victory over Stipe Miocic was kind of exactly what we needed in this sport this year at this time. Because things have been bad. Things have not been all that great. The sport itself seems to be in a slump. And so to have this almost universally well-liked figure, Daniel Cormier, totally reverse much of his legacy and plant a flag in the sand as the UFC heavyweight champion, it was cathartic to me because it was positive, and it led to this sort of like great outpouring of emotion online and like as we watched the fight.
Yeah, it's just kind of impossible not to be happy for him in that moment. I went back and watched the fight again this morning just to kind of go back and see exactly how he did it. And I found myself enjoying the post-fight stuff as much as watching the actual fight. Usually, if I'm just watching to see exactly what happened in the fight again, I'll stop it once it's over. This one, you kind of get swept up in the moment, watching the happiness, the relief and everything on his face as he's walking around there, and just seeing that all kind of sink in for him. I found myself wanting to relive that part again too. So yeah, I mean, like having a good thing happen in the sport to a nice guy is kind of a rare
on the biggest stage.
Yeah.
Like having the dominant story now be this really good thing.
Yes.
I think is exactly what we needed.
We should hold on to it because it'll probably last about 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's probably right. Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic squeezed a lot of living into 4 minutes and 33 seconds.
They did.
This fight, the way it started out with Miocic being much bigger than Daniel Cormier, obviously, as everyone expected, having the reach advantage, kind of imposing his will through the first couple of minutes, landing a couple of punching combinations, and then kind of doing like initiating the clinch. So doing the thing that you thought Daniel Cormier would want to do game plan wise against Stipe Miocic. And during the times when Stipe had him pressed up against the fence and they were clinched together, I had this feeling like, oh, he's just too big. Like, the story of this fight is playing out right now in front of my eyes. Miocic is too big. Cormier is not going to be able to keep him off of him. And like he's eventually going to get TKO'd. He's going to get tagged and knocked down. And then a couple minutes later, after they separate, Daniel Cormier is doing his weird boxing, like he's kind of awkward boxing style. And I started to realize, hey, wait a second. Like Daniel Cormier is actually doing kind of good here. Like he's landing a bunch of shots. And then, of course, it's like the quintessential MMA stoppage also, because you're watching the fight and you start to realize, hey, Daniel Cormier is doing pretty good. Oh, it's over. He knocked him out, and like he knocked him down with one shot.
Yeah.
And then Daniel Cormier was having none of Stipe Miocic recovering from that shot.
No.
Landed a couple of pinpoint accurate shots right to the jaw on the ground, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah. You mentioned that kind of awkward boxing style, and it really – you could see how well it worked for his game plan here, which was when you're standing at range with Stipe and he's extending his hands and his fingers, by the way. He does get Stipe Miocic in the eye really cleanly there and has to be warned several times about like, just staying there with his fingers out. But it's a good style for him, especially against somebody like a bigger boxer like Stipe Miocic, where he wants to be able to kind of control the hands and get to his hands before he can really start to get the combinations off. And when he does try to throw in combinations, then he's going to use that to move right into the clinch. But you could see that he mentioned afterwards that they noticed Stipe exits the clinch with his hands down sometimes. And you could see them trying to work that strategy really early on. I mean, early, like in the first minute or so, I believe he lands an uppercut out of the clinch. And it's like he's clinching to shut down the momentum, but he doesn't want to stay clinched very long. He's clinching, looking for an underhook, and then immediately looking to throw and get away. And, he kind of got slowed down at one point when Stipe was able to keep him up against the fence. When Stipe can get that underhook, as Dominic Cruz pointed out, a taller guy gets that underhook on you, especially a tall, strong guy like that, he can kind of lift you off the mat, or at least take away your leverage. And he got some trouble there, but when he could get him clinched kind of in the middle of the cage or out in space, that's where he wanted to be. He wanted to clinch, stop him a little bit, punch, and get out. And that's end up how he finishes that fight. Plus, Daniel Cormier at heavyweight looks to be thrown a little bit harder, does he not? Like he said he's knocking out all his training partners or anything. You look at him in there, he looks like a little damn wrecking ball.
Yeah.
He's lithe and athletic still, but he's also powerful.
Yeah, he certainly looked dangerous, especially after we saw him knock out the UFC heavyweight champion in somewhat dramatic and shocking fashion. I saw it floated around like, is this the biggest upset in UFC history? I think you still got to go with Matt Serra and George St. Pierre as the bigger upset.
Who's even floating that?
But I would say like this is one of the top holy shit moments in UFC history, which is not exactly the same thing, but especially the stoppage sequence was a huge holy shit moment in this sport. And I wanted to ask you this: Daniel Cormier now 21-1-1 since the second loss to John Jones got converted to a no contest. Depending on how things play out from here, obviously we don't know what will happen. But like, do you feel that when you mention after Daniel Cormier is done and retired and hopefully living a happy life with his family, if someone mentions Daniel Cormier or Daniel Cormier's career, is the first thing that you will think his knockout of Stipe Miocic at UFC 226? Because I feel like it is for me, and that is one of the reasons why I feel like this is a complete kind of like destiny-altering, legacy-altering result for Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like right now, if you ask me, what do you think of when you think of Daniel Cormier, the rivalry with John Jones does still loom very large in there. I mean, this win, like we said, it kind of replaces that information a little bit in people's minds, I guess it'll also depend on what he does now with the heavyweight title. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about Brock Lesnar and all that kind of stuff later, but I guess it will depend if we look back on it and feel like the important part of Daniel Cormier's career was when he was the heavyweight champ, or the important part was when he was the guy to test John Jones. Because I think that the redemption storyline that this gives you here after the losses to John Jones, I mean, Daniel Cormier even said it, like a year ago, he's standing in that cage crying on TV and everybody sees him. And now, a year later, he knocks out the most dominant heavyweight champion the UFC has ever had. Like, I think if you think of the dominant storyline as being like Daniel Cormier's redemption or the catharsis that comes with it, then you have to think of the John Jones stuff too, because that's what you're coming back from.
Right. Yeah, and I definitely want to get into that more in round number 2. Suffice to say that, like, if the big picture of Daniel Cormier's heavyweight title reign is that it builds a bridge, we think, to a John Jones heavyweight title reign, I'm actually totally fine with that.
Yeah,
like
I'm not mad.
From a fan's perspective. And I do want to talk about Miocic for a couple minutes, but first, at the risk of making this all about myself.
Oh God, here we go. You gonna talk about your t-shirts?
I like everything about Daniel Cormier. There's nothing that I don't like about Daniel Cormier. I like the way he fights. I like that, as my colleague Jonathan Snowden said on Twitter today, he's a big-boned middleweight and may also be the greatest heavyweight of all time, maybe the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. I like that he dresses like a high school wrestling coach. I like that he's a good broadcaster. I like his sartorial flair when he's on the air. I think he's my favorite MMA fighter of all time.
Wow.
I think
replacing Randy Couture?
I think he has replaced Randy Couture as my favorite MMA fighter of all time. And in many ways, Daniel Cormier, like, accepts the tradition of Randy Couture. He, like, carries on in the tradition of Randy Couture.
But is way more exciting to watch.
He's way more exciting. Maybe he's a better person. I don't know. Okay. You know what else I like about Daniel Cormier?
Yeah.
That when after he beats David Miocic and he goes to the cage door to invite his wife in, he says, "Where are the kids? Bring the kids in here." I was like, I can relate to all of this.
Yeah,
I can relate, despite the fact that you are like a world-class athlete, Daniel Cormier, I can relate to everything about you right now.
No, he's the daddest man on the planet. And I was commenting yesterday, that video of him leaving the cage, he's got 2 belts on his shoulders. He's doing an awkward little dance of joy, as internet funny guy Kevin Sesha pointed out, like a dad on a cruise ship conga line, kind of borderline embarrassing to his kids. And he's so happy. He's dancing and he's turning around, looking at his son, kind of enjoying this moment. And you're just like, yeah, how do you not root for the guy who just seems like badass dad who goes out there, knocks out the heavyweight champ?
Yeah. Let's talk about Stipe for a minute. Also, like a heck of a stand-up guy, I guess you would say. Posted the picture from the locker room where he's got the 2 black eyes, but he's giving the thumbs up. Just had his 6-fight win streak snapped, lost the UFC heavyweight title to the light heavyweight champion in a huge upset. But at least outwardly and publicly, seems like he's taking it in stride, although I'm sure that there were some moments of great sadness for him before we took the social media picture.
I don't know if you saw him going back and watching the fight. I got a little bit more of a chance to focus on him in the aftermath. For one thing, he's laying on his back, kind of arguing with is it Mark Goddard? I believe Mark Goddard is the ref. He's like laying on his back, kind of arguing, which is just like, man, you are arguing from a laying position. Like,
prone. Supine.
That's
arguing from a supine position.
That should tell you right there what happened. But then we see when he gets up, he actually gives Mark Goddard a little shove, like Mark Goddard is trying to help him or something, or maybe doing the thing of like, hey, don't try to stand up right away if you've been knocked out. But like, he is just not going to be corralled. He gets up, gives him a little shove, and then walks over to his corner and looks just like angry and confused.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to kind of feel heartbroken for Stipe in that moment, because you can see like the realization settling in for him, where he's looking around, he's seeing Daniel Cormier celebrate, and it's just kind of like, well, shit.
Yeah. And maybe, I don't know if we want to bounce the majority of this conversation in round number 2, but like one of the hardest things for Stipe Miocic here is that he is likely locked out of the heavyweight title picture, at least for a while, if things advance the way we think they are going to.
Yeah.
All right, let's do Are You Fucking Kidding Me? And then we will move on to round Number 2, Ben, what's your Are You Fucking Kidding Me this week?
Chad, if you had told me that the Gokhan Saki-Khalil Roundtree fight was going to end in a first-round knockout.
Yeah, I'm glad we get a chance to talk about this.
I would have believed you.
Okay, yes.
If you had told me that it would be Khalil Roundtree still standing at the end of that, I would have said, are you fucking kidding me?
You fucking kidding me?
Khalil Roundtree goes out there, he's Saki, man.
Yeah, he did.
First-round knockout, and then, all the kind of the air of a man who seemed to realize that the UFC did not call him for this fight because they were dying to be on the Khalil Roundtree business. And he went out there and he proved all you motherfuckers wrong. Are you fucking kidding me?
Fucking kidding me? Pour a little out for the homie Gokhan Saki.
Not pouring out any of this Brazilian rainforest.
No, you wouldn't want to do that. That's
super valuable.
Paid upwards of 79 cents for that.
Yeah.
Ben, I'm going to do this for my Are You Fucking Kidding Me because it leads into round number 2. But shout out to the man, Rosendo Sanchez, a.k.a. coach at American Kickboxing Academy, also known as the little dude who shoved Brock Lesnar when it looked like Lesnar was going to get into it with Daniel Cormier in the cage following Cormier's win over Miocic. Go get yourself a friend like Rosendo Sanchez.
Yeah.
Who, at least, I'm sure he's a complete badass, obviously, because he's a coach at AKA, but compared to Brock Lesnar, he looks like he's about 5'1", and he makes no bones about it, man. Shit about to pop off. He is going to shove 6'4", 280-pound Brock Lesnar like he's ready. He's ready to get some.
He's not going to stand there and watch you put your hands on his friend.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Fucking kidding me?
Big props out to Rosendo Sanchez.
Did Brock Lesnar even notice? He did not appear to notice.
At that point, it seemed like Brock Lesnar had already decided to just carry on with the rest of his gimmick.
He was dialed in.
Yeah. That's going to do it for round number 1. We will be right back with round number 2. How are we doing on that stream? We still live?
We're still live.
We're still on the stream?
It's working, at least for now. It's very exciting. This is the behind-the-scenes part that
this
people
is the
don't.
part where people get to see how the sausage is made, right?
See, what we're doing right now is we chop the show up into different rounds, and then Chad stops after each one, and he clicks the mouse a few times. I don't really know. To begin, and he makes us listen to it for a little. That's this. I don't care for this part.
UFC 226
I don't care for it. I'll be honest with you.
I would like, if we may, to spend a moment talking about catharsis. Okay. Wow. Because
This motherfucker gonna come in here talking about catharsis. Watch a cage fight.
Yeah, you got to throw a curveball every now and then, right?
I guess you do.
All right, are you ready to do an intro for round number 2?
Sure, I'll do this.
About the reemergence of the Prince of Darkness?
I gotcha.
Ready?
Yeah. So, Chad, Brock Lesnar, we see him show up cage side, wearing the kind of suit that you wear when there is no shirt that will button around your neck and therefore allow you to wear a tie.
Suit pants tucked into his cowboy boots, let's just say right off the top.
So we're teasing that Brock Lesnar is present for the fight. He comes over to Joe Rogan and talks about how he wants to do his podcast, which, I mean, yeah, you're not going to tell Brock Lesnar, no, you can't do my podcast. I also, man, I really hope that they get into some DMT talk on that one.
Number 1, it's the most Brock Lesnar thing of all time to only come in before the main event, right? Like, he's not going to sit there and watch the rest of UFC 226.
No.
He's just going to show up for the part where he gets to go in the cage and shove somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, do you think he really wants to do Joe Rogan's podcast? Because that seems like the opposite of a Brock Lesnar thing want to do.
I say there is zero chance that Brock Lesnar has ever watched Joe Rogan's podcast. He just has heard that it's a thing people like. Has heard people be like, hey, when are you going to be on Joe Rogan's podcast? And
do you think
like,
that he knows that it's a thing where you like show up and talk for a long period of time? Because that doesn't seem like it's
Often
right
about
in his wheelhouse.
A range of topics as well. Yeah, there's a good chance that maybe the big guy doesn't know what he's getting himself into here. But anyway, he's there. He's cage side. And we all can kind of see that where we're going with this whole thing. Whoever wins is going to be in some Brock Lesnar talk afterwards. I would like to know what is said in the alternate universe where Stipe Miocic is the guy who wins this fight.
Do you think he shoves him? Do you think he goes in there and shoves Stipe Miocic?
I don't think Stipe would have quite the sense of humor about it that Cormier did.
No.
I also, the way Daniel Cormier in this interview where he pivots to talking about Brock Lesnar, because he goes from...
When he says, let me take the mic for a second, Joe Rogan, that's when you know it's on.
That's right. And Joe Rogan gives him the mic. And then that's when he tells everybody, listen to DC, which already we're in like pro wrestling territory at that point. But it made me wonder, like, definitely we have talked about this beforehand, is the vibe I'm getting when he says that, when he goes right into like, there's a guy that I know who's a wrestler. And it's just like, okay, so we had this in mind. Did they go to like both locker rooms and be like, hey, heads up, Brock Lesnar's in the crowd. We're trying to get you paid next. If you win this fight, get on the mic and call this man out. Because then it allows them to be like, hey, the guy's asking for the fight. It's not like we're trying to book this fight just because we are, hungry for that sweet, sweet money. It's the champion. The champion wants this fight. Like, do you go to both guys in that situation if you're the UFC and be like, hey, call out Brock Lesnar next?
Yeah, but like, do you also think that Miocic would have done that? Like, does Stipe Miocic, given
it would have been a different call out.
Yeah, given everything we know about him, does he get on the mic in his voice that, especially after a fight, sounds like a blender full of lug nuts? Hey, does he get on the mic and garble Brock Lesnar? I can't see it, man. Like, I can't picture it in my mind brain.
It's a little harder to picture.
Can we also talk about the irony of Daniel Cormier being 1,000 times better at cutting a promo than Brock Lesnar? Yes. A man whose job largely over the last 5 years has been in professional wrestling, and Daniel Cormier cuts a rad promo, and then Brock Lesnar comes out and calls everyone a piece of shit, and I'm coming for you, motherfucker, and like he points at him.
Yeah, well, no, and like throws Joe Rogan's hand and the mic into the camera lens, which prompts the look from Joe Rogan to be like, what the fuck's your problem, man? Not crazy about that part.
Podcast introduction or invite rescinded at that point.
Yeah. First question on the podcast, have you ever done mushrooms? Second question, what the hell, man? What the hell? Okay,
what do we make of the at least a certain segment of the mixed martial arts populace being A, against this, and B, surprised by the antics in the cage between Brock Lesnar and Daniel Cormier?
Okay, well, here's the thing that bothered me about the antics. Because I get what we're all doing there, but aren't we supposed to do it a little bit more like to where it's not so clear we're all in on it?
Where we're not all looking around grinning at each other?
It's two guys grinning at each other, thinking about all the money they're going to make, while Dana White stands there and you can see like the dollar signs in his eyes, like he's a goddamn cartoon character. It made me feel a little bit too much like, okay, so we're going to like follow the playbook here on how to sell a big heavyweight fight, but we're not going to follow it well enough to make anybody really believe it. Like the whole thing of like coming in there, pushing each other, yelling at each other, and it's clear we're not really going to do anything. It's clear we're just doing this because this is a thing you do to hype up a fight. We're trying to make some goddamn money here. And in moments like that, and especially when people get, they'll offer their support, but be like, oh yeah, of course they're going to do that. That makes money. Daniel Cormier wants to make money. Like he said afterwards, hey, if you don't like it, hey, you go ahead and stay broke then. But here's the point where MMA fans should remind themselves, it's your money. Like, before you get too excited about all the money they're going to make and use that to justify absolutely everything that they're doing, remember that it is your money that they are getting. So, once you kind of understand, like I wrote in the Trading Shots thing, and Danny Downs and I were talking about it, that the greed is the Rosetta Stone that kind of unlocks everything here. It helps you understand what everybody is doing. And it's easier to get behind Daniel Cormier and be like, well, hey, yeah, I want to see Daniel Cormier get paid. That guy deserves it. He doesn't have much time left, according to him. I want to see him use the heavyweight title, kind of cash out, and live a happy life there. And yet it's also one of these things where we're all supposed to look at this and be like, this is good because it makes money that is mine for somebody who is not me. Is that really all it takes for us?
To me, the strangest thing, and it's almost like shades of Mayweather McGregor, like the lead up to Mayweather McGregor. To me, the strangest thing is that it's totally going to work, and it still works at this point. 2018, they're going to cut it up into a sweet video vignette, even though as it happened, Lesnar's additions to it were totally cringeworthy. Like they're going to make it look cool in the highlights. They're going to have a sweet embedded video for it. And despite the fact that we all know that it is largely theater, although, Daniel Cormier and Brock Lesnar could legitimately dislike each other by the end of all of this, everyone's still going to watch it, and it's still going to be a big, big fight.
Yeah, and in a way, the money does help get people interested. Like when you can say, like, "Hey, this is a big fight. Look at the stakes that they're fighting for." I mean, that's been that's one of the things that I kept noticing the similarities back when I was doing all that reading about the bare knuckle days. Was that the biggest fights, part of the big deal and the story about the fight would be how much money was at stake. And so that's going to be one of the storylines here too. But then also what you're going to deal with is, okay, Daniel Cormier and Brock Lesnar are going to fight. Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to lose. Somebody's going to be the heavyweight champion after that. But either way, you're going to lose your heavyweight champion. It seems like if Daniel Cormier sticks to his plan to retire, and even if you try to squeeze, one or two more fights out of him, he's going to be 40 by then. So you're not going to squeeze too many more. Brock Lesnar, definitely not interested in being a full-time professional fighter.
Do you, the money says yes, but do you want Brock Lesnar to be your heavyweight champion if you're the UFC? Like, how is that even a workable solution?
I mean, I'm sure you would love to have Brock Lesnar stick around as heavyweight champion, but it's not going to happen.
Right.
He's 40 himself. It's clearly his interest is not with being like a full-time fighter at this point. You're not going to get either one of these guys for very long. So really what we're doing is we're thinking to the next payday, and then we're going to have a problem after that. And the feeling seems to be just like, well, hey, screw it. I guess we'll figure something out, but we got to get paid now.
Right. Well, they've already figured it out, though, right? Because the alley-oop slam dunk here is to have John Jones fight the winner of this fight, no matter who it is. Like, DC against John Jones is a huge fight at heavyweight if it's for the 265-pound title. John Jones against Brock Lesnar for the UFC heavyweight title is probably the biggest UFC fight of all time. So, so long as John Jones can free himself from the regulatory company that you control, you should be good. Like, you should have a plan here moving forward, because there were all kinds of rumors that they tried to do John Jones against Brock Lesnar before, and it didn't. Like, they couldn't put it together because nobody could stay on the right side of the rules for that one. So, if you're Daniel Cormier, you should have 2 fights left: Brock Lesnar, John Jones.
Okay, if what we're looking at is basically this is the path to eventually having John Jones probably as the UFC heavyweight champion, and then having a light heavyweight division that has neither John Jones nor Daniel Cormier, then do you renew your campaign to shut it down with the 205-pound class in the UFC?
You better get some young guys in there. You better get some new faces. Like Alexander Gustafsson is your assumptive champion without those other guys back. But you got to do something. You really, really got to do something if John Jones and Daniel Cormier are not going to be there anymore. Here's my question. Let's say you put an interim title on the winner of Gustafsson versus No Time. Do you risk it by having John Jones come back and fight those guys for the title, and then he would be the light heavyweight champion fighting the heavyweight champion to try to become the champ?
You want to do all that
champ in UFC history.
You want to take all those chances just to put some more gold on the poster.
It's a big risk.
That's a big risk.
But then you can put 10 belts on the poster. Put everybody's belts on there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about that one. Although, did you notice that we made sure to announce Daniel Cormier as the former Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix champion? We want to make sure everybody knows, okay, he's bringing his own belt, but also he was a different kind of heavyweight champion before. That's when we care about your past accomplishments and other organizations. When A, we own those organizations now, and B, it's helpful to sell the thing that we are currently doing.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. You want to do Are You Fucking Kidding Me?
We already did.
Oh, I mean, yes.
Round 1.
Okay.
It's only round 2.
Oh, man.
Keep your shorts on.
The stream is messing me up.
I know. It's all right, though.
Are you going to do your dance number? We talked about a dance number, right?
My sexualized dance, my overly sexualized dance.
You got to give the people something.
I think I'm going to save it. Save it for maybe next week.
You don't have one prepared, do you? You didn't prepare an overly sexualized dance.
It's possible I did not. That's going to do it for round number 2. We will be right back with round number 3.
I feel like maybe you start swinging the shoulders a little bit, then you get the hips into it. What is that?
This is kind of like what I don't know. It's just what I'm feeling. It's what I'm feeling right now.
I'm not feeling it. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not feeling it at all. One of the fun things about doing the podcast over at Chad's house is to see what kind of stuffed animals we're going to have on the table when we come in to record.
What kind of animal do you think that is?
A badger.
That is a red panda.
Well, son of a bitch.
There you go.
What's the story behind the red panda?
It actually belongs to a friend of ours, and we were over there watching the World Cup, and Juno, our 1-year-old, was super enamored with it, and they said we could take it home for a while. So we did. But now I'm keeping it on the table so that he doesn't mess it up. So he doesn't like bite its face off because he loves it so much.
Keeping the toy that's for the child away from the child. What you're saying.
All right, are you ready to do this? Round number 3? About Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis?
I'm ready to do it. Danny Downs is with us.
Oh, all right.
He's on paternity leave. Shout out to Danny Downs.
They just have a baby?
Yeah.
Is that their first?
No, is it the first?
I thought that they had one before.
He's watching. Tell
Danny,
us.
is this your first child?
We're waiting, Danny. We can wait all day. No, we got shit to do.
We're not actually waiting, but we do want to know. All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Second son.
Okay, yeah. Just started the recording there. Now are you ready?
Now I'm ready.
Okay. Ben, what the hell happened during Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis in the co-main event of UFC 226, where the obvious answer is not much.
Not a damn thing.
What happened here? This was the stone cold lead pipe lock money in the bank slugfest we've been waiting for our whole lives.
See, that's where we went wrong, obviously, is we got too excited about it.
Raised expectations. Somebody pissed off the MMA gods again.
It seemed like a fight that couldn't possibly fail to deliver a preferably quick and brutal knockout, and yet we got nothing even close to that. Now, afterwards, Derek Lewis clearly experiencing some back troubles. You could tell he went back to the corner after the first round, told his coach that he was having trouble with his back, to which his coach replied in classic MMA cornerman fashion, "Man, I love you, but you got to fucking fight through that shit, man."
Kind of like what Duke Rufus said to Paul Felder about the broken arm. Because like you could tell Paul Felder didn't really want to say it out loud that he had a broken arm because he knew the cameras were on him. And Duke Rufus was just kind of like, I understand. I know you have a broken arm, but we're kind of in the middle of a fist fight here.
Yeah, same thing about, Greg Jackson telling you he doesn't want to hear about your pulled groin right now. But then Francis Ngannou, like it would seem in retrospect, like especially, he's obviously not in Derek Lewis's corner, can't hear him say that his back is fucked up, but you can tell by the way he's moving that he's not doing so great. And it seems like he might have been easy pickings at some point later on in that fight. And Francis Ngannou says later that his problem was that he carried his fear from the last fight, from the Stipe Miocic fight, into this one.
Which is a strange explanation, right? Because as I watched this fight, and I believe that they came close to setting a record for like least number of strikes landed in a 3-round fight or whatever.
I like how my guy, Olivier Aubin Mercier, was quick to point out that he holds the record for the least strikes landed and still winning a fight, so finishing a fight. It's 3, by the way. Okay,
yeah, that's actually higher than I expected. Francis Ngannou, I thought we were dealing with an injury here or something, just because like Francis Ngannou seemed so listless. He seemed like he didn't want to engage really. He wasn't throwing a lot.
Maybe it's an injury of the mind.
Yeah, and then
the psyche.
Then he releases this statement following the fight, saying that he brought his fear from the Stipe Miocic fight into this fight, which I thought was strange. Although I guess you got to take the guy's explanation at face value because that doesn't sound like the kind of thing that you would make up if it wasn't true. But like surprising because it's not like he got like knocked out super bad by Stipe Miocic. They went the damn distance.
Right, but he got exhausted against Stipe Miocic and then had to keep fighting anyway. And then, I mean, I kind of get that. Like there is a certain terror that comes with being exhausted in a fist fight and realizing like, okay, you still got to get in there. You still got to get up off the stool each round and go out there and take your licking. And it's a terrifying feeling to feel like you're kind of helpless and you're too tired to fight back or to do anything. And so I can see maybe that he felt like he wanted to make sure that didn't happen. What I guess I wonder is if that was your fear, then when you get to the third round, or even if you want to say like the last half of the third round, why aren't you saying to yourself there like, well, hey, we made it. Like we're not totally exhausted. The fight's going to be over soon one way or another. Now I can really let loose and go. And instead, he seemed like he was just, and he was a little more active in the third round, but it seemed like the entire time he was trying to fight from so far out and trying like not to engage. I don't know if that was all just pacing himself or what, but at least he got the message that nobody was into this. He apologized to basically everybody who could have possibly seen the fight, like fans, coaches, family, everybody. And I mean, his response saying like, hey, there's nothing really I can do now except go back out there the next time and, you know, earn people's respect back.
Yeah. So you think that it wasn't just that he took a whipping from Stipe Miocic. You think that the primary fear that he's talking about in his statement is the fear of gassing out. Like he wanted to pace himself, because he really paced himself in this one.
Just paced himself all the way to the end. Maybe he had a treadmill session after the fight that he wanted to be somewhat fresh for. Maybe that was it. I mean, the other explanation, the one that Dana White offered.
Right. I wanted to ask you about the Dana White comments.
First of all, leave it to Dana White to just, especially when you're staring at a situation where you have a 39-year-old heavyweight champion who's going to fight a 40-year-old former heavyweight champion next. You're probably going to look at a situation where one way or another you might be without a heavyweight champion somewhat soon. You got a young talent in the division. He had one bad showing, the only bad showing he's had since he's been with your company, really. And then you want to go out there to the press conference and just absolutely fucking bury him.
Yeah, and you would think, like, if you're going to end up with like Brock Lesnar, Daniel Cormier, or John Jones as your heavyweight champ moving forward circa 2019, you want to have Francis Ngannou around. You want to have his image rehabilitated by that point, because I would think that he would be, despite like this performance, despite his loss to Miocic, you would think that you would want him as your number one contender, because even in the wake of this dreadful fight against Derek Lewis, if you told me, what do you think about John Jones versus Francis Ngannou, I'd be like, where do I buy a ticket, right? # would watch. So yeah, it is weird, but also, I mean, surprising, but also unsurprising, since we know how the president of the UFC operates at this point, and that is he's not going to hesitate to throw absolutely anyone under the bus.
Yeah, and
that's how he feels in the moment.
He said the comment that other people working for the UFC had run-ins with Francis Ngannou's ego. He had run-in, and he attributed the whole like flying back to France during a training camp for Stipe Miocic. He attributes all that to ego. It also seems a little bit like kind of classically UFC, like, hey, we were building this guy up. We wanted you to think that he was a superstar and that he was going to be like this huge figure. But once he started to think of himself that way, then we got annoyed. Like, yeah, that is some super UFC shit.
Right. I will say that the two things that I thought were somewhat troublesome about Francis Ngannou when I went to Las Vegas to do that story about him for Bleacher Report were number one, that he clearly, like, his lifelong ambition was to be a boxer. That he didn't, like, even now, he's a really good MMA fighter, but I felt like if someone knocked on his door and was like, hey, man, I'll give you a bunch of money to come be a boxer, do you want to do that instead? That he would say yes.
So would most MMA fighters.
Right, like if he could make it work. Like, that's his true love, I think, is boxing. So, like, I could see a guy like that getting beat by Stipe Miocic and then starting to think, like, maybe this MMA thing wasn't as fun as you thought it was while you were running off 12 straight wins or whatever it was. The other thing that I thought was strange was that his primary or head coach, Fernando Lopez, still lives in Paris. So Ngannou lives in Las Vegas and trains every day at the UFC Performance Center with what I gathered was kind of a revolving door of coaches and training partners. At least for the Alistair Overeem fight, which is when I went to cover him, Fernando Lopez still lived in France. So they didn't do the camp together, like in the same room. They would like talk on Skype and stuff, but Lopez didn't come in until like 2 weeks before the fight, and then they put like the finishing touches on the game plan. So I actually don't think it's weird at all for Francis Ngannou to go back to Paris while he's, in the middle of a fight camp. And I also wonder, like, is training at the UFC Performance Center like the best thing for him if you're like the guy that you are most comfortable with and the guy that knows you the best isn't going to be there?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say you had some insights into his ego. Did you get any?
I mean, like when I talked to the guy, like,
did he ever declare himself to be a god?
You can't act like you know these people if you are just a reporter, because we don't really know anybody in this sport all that well. But like, I found the man to be super ego free. Like when I went to his house and hung out with him and talked to him for a while. Like, he's been through so much drudgery in his life. like working in the sand mines of Cameroon and stuff like that, and basically like emigrating to France as a homeless person who had no clue what to do besides to go to boxing gyms and say you wanted to be the heavyweight champion of the world. Like, I didn't get the sense that he had, I mean, he's a professional fighter, so like he has some ego, but like I didn't get the impression that he was arrogant by any stretch of the imagination. I would have said the opposite thing.
Did he ever call you a peasant?
Well, yeah, all the time.
Okay.
Every time he addressed me.
Oh,
he
the man's got eyes. Yeah.
Peasant, get me a bottle of body armor.
Do you ever say, I am better than you?
Oh, yeah, every time. Peasant to I am better than.
Yeah.
No, man, like he couldn't have been nicer. He couldn't have been more accommodating. He couldn't have been more down to earth. He couldn't have been more relatable as far as I was concerned. So, like, I'm actually super surprised that someone would say that his ego got in the way, aside from the fact that you're dealing with a guy who's like 6'4", 270 pounds, looks like an Adonis getting off the bus, and is a high-level athlete. Like, that person is going to have an ego. All of those people are going to have egos.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, the guy who can come out after that fight and be like, that was terrible, I'm sorry, and it was a result of my fear, that does not strike me as somebody who
right, that's not an egotist, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, especially the way heavyweight is, if Francis Ngannou goes out there and knocks out somebody, just some no-name heavyweight schlub in his next fight, everybody's right back on the Francis Ngannou train.
Yeah, he's back at that point, which is, I think, probably what you want to do, right? Get him somebody that we know, but somebody that he's probably going to win, and then you got him set back up to be your number one contender whenever the carousel comes around again.
Also, I did a story on this after because everybody's saying, hey, that was the worst heavyweight fight that we've seen. And then when you start digging through the archives to ask yourself, was that really the worst heavyweight fight? Man, there's a lot of contenders for that crown.
Yeah, and I think you would have to say worst in the modern era, right? Because I remember when Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn went to Detroit, and the Michigan State Athletic Commission tried to tell them right before the fight that they weren't allowed to punch each other. Like, weren't allowed to punch with a closed fist, because this was back in the human cockfighting days of MMA. And those dudes basically just circled each other for 30 minutes and threw nary a strike throughout the whole thing.
I don't know. I mean, you want to go watch 5 rounds of Arlovsky Sylvia 3 and then come back and talk to me. Or, you want to watch one. Like, Frank Mir has at least 3 entries in the potential worst heavyweight fight in UFC history.
Well, then there was Kevin Jordan and Gabriel Gonzaga, which is saved by the Superman punch knockout
in the last 30 seconds.
But leading up to that, it was awful.
Yeah, no, I actually went back and watched some of that while writing this thing, and you can feel Joe Rogan just sighing on the microphone there. He runs out of things to possibly say about it, and it's just looking at his watch.
You're a glutton for punishment, man. Going back watching those fights.
I know.
Did you at least set up a timer so you could keep track of how much you were getting paid?
I'm not sure I want to know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it works anyway. All right, well, you want to do Just Saying Stuff, Ben, and then we'll get out of here for this week?
Sure.
All right, Ben, what's your Just Saying Stuff this week?
Jed, I'm just saying, have you seen the video of your guy Chuck Liddell hitting pads?
I have not. But this is good research for Friday's streaming.
Yeah, a video has emerged. Chuck Liddell ramping it back up and training out there, hitting some pads. And granted, hey, it's just training in the gym. You got some time to work up to the fight. It's been a while, but especially for the streamers, see the face I'm making.
Yeah, this is where being on the live stream really helps, because you are making a grimace, a scared grimace.
I don't know about this.
Well, we need to see some comparison footage of Tito Ortiz hitting pads before we can say anything definitively.
Well, definitively, what we may be able to say is that this is not going to be the fastest fight you've ever seen.
Okay, all right, there we go. Not going to break any land speed records.
You will not have any trouble tracking the punches in this one.
Well, Ben, earlier in the show, my Are You Fucking Kidding Me going out to the AKA coach who shoved Brock Lesnar, the rare positive, Are You Fucking Kidding Me? This week, I'm just saying, who didn't shove Brock Lesnar, who looked like he wasn't going to shove Brock Lesnar, who looked like he couldn't be bothered to care about shoving Brock Lesnar in the cage after Brock Lesnar just put his hands on his teammate. The kid Luke Rockhold.
Well,
out here dressed like a sailor from the 1940s, looking like he just hopped off the boat with Gatsby. I'm just saying, Luke Rockhold not jumping out of his loafers to come to the defense of Daniel Cormier.
Well, obviously, look at him. I mean, you don't want to.
Well, you don't want to get anything out of place. You don't want to risk ripping your J. Crew sweater.
He's out there in a pair of white slacks, man. You know the high risk maneuver it is to go out to a UFC event in a pair of white slacks. The stain potential there is off the charts, and you want him to go get mixed up in a melee with Brock Lesnar,
well,
get some Jack Link's beef jerky on his white slacks? That's never coming out.
If I'm Luke Rockhold and I'm in the hotel room getting my white slacks on, I'm doing some moves in front of the mirror thinking, okay, let's say just by way of example that I have to do a flying kick to the jaw of Brock Lesnar later on after the main event in my white slacks. I don't want to rip the crotch out of these things. I want it to be a highlight reel moment that will live on in infamy in the history of the UFC.
Do you think when the AKA guys got back and looked at the footage that, you know, everybody's seeing what happened there? We're enjoying our moment. We see Brock Lesnar come in. We see your dude run up and give him a shove when he puts his hands on Daniel Cormier. And then we see Luke Rockhold in the back looking like he just came from the fucking yacht club. Do you think that every eye in the room slowly turns toward Luke, like everybody going, where were you, man?
And he's just talking on his phone. He doesn't even realize it. That's what I imagine anyway. That's going to do it for this week's Co-Main Event podcast. We will be back next week to tell you about the stuff that happened at this UFC Fight Night event over in Boise, UFC Fight Night 133, where the main event is Junior Dos Santos against Blagoy Ivanov.
Nailed it.
Ivanov? Is that what we're doing?
Yep.
Blagoy Ivanov.
Guy who beat Fedor in Sambo.
Okay, all right.
That guy.
Cool.
You know him.
Yeah, that's going to be at the CenturyLink Arena down there in Boise.
Granddaddy of them all.
As for right now, though, we are done. We are through. We are out.
See, you know the thing I was thinking about having the nickname with old in it? Is that's a nickname you can grow into.
Old Sport.
It's like, there you go, Old Sport. That's not bad. It's the opposite of like the California Kid kind of nickname, where like it sounds cool when you're like 20, but then when you're 35, people are looking at you going like, dude, you're not Wonder Boy anymore. You know, this one, the old nickname, the more time goes by, the more fitting it is.
Has a lot of shelf life.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, oh my God, Luke Rockhold with a flying kick in his white pants. We'll remember this moment for the rest of our lives.
Glorious white pants streaking across the screen.
That's how you need to be thinking about it.
Yeah.
You're getting dressed for an evening.
Mm-hmm. Always got to think, what if I had to fucking drop kick Brock Lesnar in the face? Well, that's it. That's how it's done, everybody.
This is the part where Ben goes home, carries on with his day, and I do the rest of the work that it takes to put the podcast out.
Yeah. I think I'm going to catch a nap. Feels like a nap kind of day.
Sounds glorious.
You know what I'm saying?
I wouldn't know.
Thank you all for joining us on this stream. We hope to continue doing this indefinitely or until our equipment breaks or until one of us is horribly disfigured and we can't bear to be seen by the world. I hope it's you.
I just wear a mask.
No, actually, you could pull that off. You could pull off a mask. All right. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget Friday's book club event.
Get your...
I got some shit to say about this book. Let me tell you.
Get your entries in. Send us your thoughts for Friday's book club.
You're going to want that bobblehead. Pass it on down to your children and your children's children.